Good evening and welcome to all participants for the Windrush Caribbean Film Festival Emancipation Day digital screenings. We thank you for joining us this evening and we hope we have a fantastic lineup of short films that you will enjoy. So, first of all, let me tell you a little bit about the Windrush Caribbean Film Festival. This festival is actually a creation of a group of partners that are actually spread across the world who are here to mark Windrush Day in the UK. For those who don't know, the Windrush was the SS Empire Windrush, which departed from the Caribbean in 1948 and arrived in the UK on the 22nd of June, carrying over 500 migrants from the Caribbean region. Those migrants were treated really badly in their experiences in the UK, and whilst I set up the first, second and third generation of Windrush descendants, it was decided at the 70th anniversary that the British government would actually honour Windrush Day and create a national day. From that, we decided as a group of partners, we decided to create the Windrush Film Festival as a way of acknowledging and understanding those ancestors and those pioneers who came on the Windrush to set up future generations in the UK. As part of that series, we decided to create a short film to mark emancipation across the Caribbean islands. And today you'll see 3 films, and you also have the pleasure of meeting one of the directors, Mandisa Pantin, who will actually talk about her film and why she made it and created it. The film are all short, but we hope that you sit back, you relax, enjoy them, get your popcorn, get your liquor, get your drink, whatever you're going to do, and sit back and enjoy some films that you will not see across the terrestrial channels. With that, I'd like to thank one of our sponsors, the Funding Network, who have actually provided funds for us to be able to do this. This is a project that's come from the heart of all the people involved. So what we'll do is move on. I'll just tell you the name of the 3 films that you'll be seeing today. The first film is called Erisha Suite. The second film is Mary Seacole. And the third film is a film called Caribbean Skin, African Identity. So what I want you to do is, while you sit back and relax, is I'll introduce you to Mandisa and we'll just have a brief conversation about her film.
Thank you so much, Gary, and welcome to our celebration of Independence Night for Windrush Caribbean Film Festival. I'd like to introduce you briefly to the 3 films that we've shown tonight. First of all, there's Erisha Suite, which is a docu-dance drama celebrating traditions that Trinidadians practice to honor the Orishas. Secondly, there's Seacole, which follows the life of Mary Seacole, a hero and nurse during the Crimean War, and very much a part of the Windrush community. Last but not least, is a film by myself called Caribbean Skin, African Identity, which explores how people feel about their African roots and their African traditions and how it relates to their country identity in terms of Trinidad and Tobago. And that is sort of from a personal and perspective of others of African Caribbean descent. And basically that's tonight's run. I hope you enjoy. Have a great night, everyone.
I'd just like to welcome you back and thank Mandisa for that introduction to the films. Hope you've enjoyed watching that. So what we'd like to do is introduce you and tell you a little bit more about the film festival. The Windrush Caribbean Film Festival aims to engage audiences in cinema and art forms, telling stories of the Caribbean generation. The Caribbean generation who arrived on the Empire Windrush and therefore lived out their dreams, stories, and some, in cases, failure, but how people came back and showed their resilience. If you would like to find out more about the Windrush Film Festival, you can visit several places, so bear with me as we go through those. We're going to make sure that you are connected. So the first place you can visit is www.windrushfilmfestival.com, and from there you can go on to purchase your tickets for the festival and passes. For anything else that's happening with the Windrush Film Festival, you can sign up to our newsletter, which is sent out at regular intervals, just keeping you updated on what we're planning and what we're doing. And as I mentioned at the beginning, this is the first year of the film festival. And unfortunately, due to COVID-19, as I'm sure we've all been impacted by it, you'll see that the festival has moved to October this year as part of Black History Month, just so that we can still make sure that we actually mark this significant day. Moving further forward in the future, that date will return to the 22nd of June as part of the National Windrush Day as celebrated in the UK. So where else can you find out about the Windrush Film Festival? You have our website. I'm just going to give you our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And for ease and simplicity, we've actually got the same handle for each one, which is @Windrush Film Fest. By logging on to these, you can keep up to us, you can keep up to date with what we're up to, what we're planning to do, and get involved in the festival. As well as for those who are upcoming and emerging filmmakers, can actually submit a film as part of the Micro Digital Film Challenge, where we're asking you to actually document what are your Windrush stories. You can actually submit those on Film Freeway. And as I said, if you visit the website, you'll find out more details. So with that, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. I hope that you're actually encouraged to join the other films in our series. The next one will be on the 6th of August, which will look at Jamaican independence. And there's a whole list that you can find on the website that will actually keep you up to date. So stay tuned, keep in touch. Don't forget, tell your friends, family, members, you know, let's make sure that Windrush Day is actually marked and honored for what it actually means to the Caribbean community worldwide. So sit back, enjoy the films, and thank you for joining us.
Oh, Father Heaven, Mother Moon, Friend Earth, shine your light on me. Cleanse me, nurture me, sustain me, embrace me, your humble child, and fill me with your magic. Ashe. My mother told me never to forget. I am a descendant of a people with great power and strength. We are the children of Olorun, the source, and Olodumare, the creator, guided by the Igun, our ancestors, the ancient ones, who lived long before us and who are with us even now, in spirit. The strangers came and stole our magical people as slaves, binding our bodies, but never our spirit. You see, the Orishas followed us across the big waters. They are with us wherever we go. And although they burned our drums, destroyed our shrines, and we went under persecution and fines, we understood. Faith always finds a way. And an answer did come.
Do you know, if you call them, they will come, they will come, they will come, they will come. And they will always stay with you, with you, with you, with you, with you.
Ogun belele, oye, ogun belele. Apa mande dada mazuko. Ogun belele, ogun belele, ogun belele. Ogun belele, oh yeah, ogun belele. Ogun belele, oh yeah, ogun belele. Abamande dada masuko. Ogun belele. Abamande ogun obatala, oh. Ogun belele. Ogun belele. Ogun belele. Ogun belele, oh yeah, ogun belele. Ogun belele, oh yeah, ogun belele. Abamande dada masuko. Ogun belele. Abamande ogun obatala, oh. Ogun belele. Ogun belele. Ogun belele. Hey! Yahweh, 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 Kolocho, Sambego, Weile, Sambego, Weile, Sambego, Weile, Sambego, Weile, Oloribe Baba Legba. Oloribe baba legba, Oloribe baba legba koho, Oloribe baba legba. Ajaja o, herile, ajaja e, herile, ajaja kumewo, herile, obo wareke, herile, ajaja o, herile, ajaja e, herile, ajaja kumewo, herile, obo wareke, herile, ajaja o, herile, ajaja e, herile, ajaja kumewo, herile, obo wareke, herile, ajaja o, herile, ajaja e, herile. finished the work they sent me to do. I finished the work they sent me to do. I finished the work they sent me to do.
I finished the work they sent me to do.
I finished the work. I finished the work they sent me to do. I finished the work. I finished the work. And we all going home to a higher place. I finished the work. I finished the work. I finished the work. And we all going home to a higher place. I finished the work. I finished the work. I finished the work. And we all going home higher place. I finished the work. I finished the work. I finished the work.
I finished the work they sent me to do. I finished the work they sent me to do. And we all go home to a higher place. I finished the work they sent me to do. I finished the work they sent me to do. And we all go home to a higher place. Asmuni Nubunamsi Book Uncle Gere Kizaro Bokumie. The moment has come, your time is now. Your soul can rest, child, your story's told. Ancestors smiling, know that you're blessed, child. Giving the voice of the voiceless and fallen. Holy, 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 praise God Almighty. Your time has come, you'll not be forgotten. I'll let them know my roots where I got them. Hey mama, mama africana. Hey mama, mama africana. Fere yaro, fere wisha. Fere yaro, fere biya. Fere yaro, fere wisha. Fere yaro, la fensi biya.
doctor, a nurse. I saw one on the battlefield. I'll get her.
Cholera. I've seen this before in Jamaica.
But you're black. You sound like the enemy.
My name is Mary Seacole, and I am no one's enemy. I would like to see Miss Florence Nightingale. Miss Nightingale is already in the Crimea, and our quota of nurses is already filled. Good morning. I knew right then that had there been a vacancy, I would not have been chosen to fill it. Very well. If they won't take me, I'll take myself to the Crimea. I wish to see Miss Nightingale. Can I be of any assistance? I have many years of experience.
The West Indian Constitution is plainly not suited for nursing.
Why is this hospital so far from the battlefront?
I couldn't allow my nurses to be exposed to any danger. Good afternoon.
One thought never left my mind as I walked those fearful miles. At the scene of war, on the spot where the poor fellows are stricken down by pestilence or Russian bullets. It is there that a woman's hands can dress their wounds. May I borrow your horse? Thank you. Won't be long. Eat this. It will make you feel better. Seems like the soldiers treated my little hotel like their own homes.
Mary, the Russians have surrendered. The war is over. We've won.
I had spent everything I had. My supplies were useless now. I was bankrupt. I was going to leave the Crimea as I entered it.
Get your official programs here. Thank you, lady. All the proceeds going to the Mary Seacole Fund. Can't let a great lady like that go penniless, can we?
For bravery, for saving lives, and for kindness.
My boys, my boys. England became my home. The Queen and her family became great friends of mine. I wrote a book on my experiences, which became a bestseller. But just as in the Crimea, the soldiers would still come to my house for a cup of tea and medicines.
Now picture me as can hear just cool, looking on, and you catch my eyes. And it's no surprise, seeing there's a road on and we're together, looking at the stars with a vision of forever, seeing love in your eyes, love in my eyes, love in your eyes, all 'cause of imagination.
When I was a little girl, I used to think of myself as blue, pink, green, and tangerine, according to my mood. One day at school, someone mentioned that one of my friends was an Indian. Confused, I went home and asked if it was true. My mother replied yes, and that I was an African.
And all those ancestors who has paved the way and bring this tradition so that we can inherit it and we can carry it on so our children can take it further.
I was born in Trinidad and Tobago in 1975, 5 years after the Black Power Revolution, 13 years after Trinidad and Tobago gained independence, 136 years after emancipation of slavery.
My name is Barbara Josling. I am 85 years old, born in 1924. And when I was growing up as a child, we never thought about race. We never heard anything about race.
Clearly in the 1970s, we affirmed black events in the United States, in other parts of the world, impacted on us. And of course, we were having our own turmoil within the Caribbean, and surely in Trinidad and Tobago as people discovered, quote unquote, their roots. I think that was transformed later on into an assertiveness about Africa, because the blackness derived from Africa.
Once you have any touch of black in you, where does it come from? Africa. It doesn't come from India, it doesn't come from China, it doesn't come from any other continent but Africa. So the color of your skin of black, whatever your perception of black might be, is a definite line to Africa.
This is my holy garments. I'm a member of the I'm an African Hebrew Israelite from the house of Yahweh, and this to me is a holy occasion.
When I'm African, that makes me more prouder because I'm original, you know. The Father had blessed me and made me who I am, so I'm grateful for that.
I identify myself as an African. I'll be honest about that. I identify myself as an African. Until the Caribbean has defined itself for me, and I feel like I could grab onto that kind of identity, I'm not going to live in the schizophrenia and try to pretend I'm European. I know there are things that are very European about me. There's been a process of colonization, which I have been the product of, you know, but even though I think in the English language, right, that doesn't mean that I think English, or I think like an Englishman.
Sometimes as a child, my father would say, "What am I supposed to channel through the mirror? India?" And my mother would laugh, but I knew all that she saw was Africa.
Yeah, first I discovered what identity means. Yeah. When you understand what identity means, then you look to African identity, right? So you understand who you are, etc., and so on, to understand many books and many articles written on identity.
I got bits and pieces about the Africans in North Manzanilla from my mom, who grew up there. And she used to tell us stories about when she was a young girl growing up, when Africans from the Yoruba tribe came to live in North Manzanilla. And the times when they would hear anything or see them, mainly was either because of a birth, a marriage, and a death, because of their manner of expressing themselves about joy and about grief.
I was born Mark Bernard Cropper, and now my legal name is Enyola Odushak Bemia Deleka. I went through a spiritual initiation exercise as a formal entry into African religion and a way of reconnecting with my ancestral path. And through that divination process, the name was selected. I chose to further make a political statement of reclaiming the name, meaning reinstalling the name legally.
I come from two cultures, Trinidadian and African. I have a Nigerian father and a Trinidadian mother. So I know, coming from Africa, what it is to be an African.
We have now, instead of seeing ourselves as tied to the specific landmass or the specific language that gave birth to us, we now have this idea of a collective identity from a continent. So African identity, I guess, is one, how we see ourselves, and two, what the world reflects back to us, what people have told us and how people perceive us.
I might not be the African in terms of what people call nationality. There's a difference. I'm not an African by nationality. I don't want to go and live in Africa by any means. I don't want to go there. But I identify with Africa.
No, wait. I understand the whole, you're of African descent. I'm of African descent. I do identify with Africa. I identify with it. But I am, and I would not say that parts of Africa don't resonate within me, but I will not say that I am African. And I think that is not schizophrenia, is trying to resolve something within yourself, right? And if you sit down and just wait for you to say, I'm not gonna wait for, a definition of the Caribbean, you don't sit and wait for that.
I'm not gonna sit and wait for it, but there is a choice. There is a choice that's there for you.
There's a choice,
because
right?
you see, if there were not.
Having been always fascinated with South Africa due to the fact that my name is South African, I felt very proud when Archbishop Desmond Tutu came down here and declared us a rainbow country because of the variety of races and their tolerance for each other. However, in primary school, I certainly got an education about what the Trinidadian version of racial separatism is.
As far as that is concerned, Trinidadians do believe that the skin color has a great influence on your African culture, or you need to go back to your roots.
Who is the pretty one? The pretty one might be a color of skin, or the pretty one might be the one who look more European or from the Spanish forefathers or whatever it is. And it is not as blatant as it was maybe in, let's say, the 70s and the 80s and when I was growing up. When I was told that, oh my God, it's a pity you're so black. If you wasn't so black, you would have been, but you need to get a red man so you can make a little fairer child be a pretty girl. I mean, it has been said. And although I may think, yeah, I don't really subscribe to it, if something is said to you enough, it is somewhere in your subliminal consciousness. So you really have to try and be aware of what you're telling children.
In no case that I have met from direct contact with African traditional religion have I met anything that attempts to define self on the basis of skin.
In Tobago, growing up, almost everybody was black. We had maybe 3 Indian families. Trinidad is a completely different culture. So I came to an area where I recognized I was the only technically black-skinned person in the room when I'm at a job or, things like that. So I became aware of my black skin. But in terms of being African, I don't see my skin as being African.
I have a so-called Indian mother and a so-called Negro or black or whatever you want to call it, African descent father. And I did not grow up with either of these people. I grew up with a so-called Negro, black or African descent mother who in her, how to put it, primitive, loving way called me the coolie child. And why the coolie child hair getting hard? It was so nice and straight when she was small. But the thing is, it's a terrible thing to say, and it is horrible, but I myself, I am not politically correct because I was called a coolie child. I had what they say was a nigger father, and I had what was supposed to be a coolie mother, and I grew up with a different set of people. So it was, because it was said in a loving way doesn't necessarily excuse it. You know, I don't feel it was really said in a very loving way, but it was a terrible thing to say if you're writing it on paper and your third party reading it. They will be appalled. But she was saying something to her that was a nice, loving thing. Look, Makuni child. Look how nice she is. You know?
Okay, well, I grew up in St. Lucia, which the demographics are pretty simple. It's a land of black people, and black meaning both Indians, well, in a very small number, and Africans, and that's how it exists actually. They exist as one people. But I did spend some time in the States. Like I used to spend significant amount of time in the States, like 6 months here, 6 months there, and there I did encounter racism and these things. So I mean, your Africanness becomes apparent to you even though you don't want to take it on.
At home, it was a kind of a different story. It was us versus them, Americans and Europeans on television and magazines versus the reality of West Indian life. And whether it was my father insisting that I learn Bob Marley word for word, or blasting Bim and Joker of Seville albums constantly on weekends, or going to family gatherings and singing old calypsos and Santi Mighty verses, at home, I learned to appreciate being Caribbean, and more specifically, Trinidadian and Tobagonian.
And the fact that a lot of the visual culture that we get is not Trinidadian or Caribbean, but more American and European. You start seeing them now starting to buy in a lot more to what are considered, well, I guess, a return to colonial values. So I think it's a kind of mix and a tug-of-war.
Since I'm small, it's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Since I'm small, my concept of a hero was Luke Skywalker. He was the one going on a quest, and his face and skin didn't look like mine. And so I was taught to identify with everything that was white.
We see the cultures of the world in Trinidad. So Africa has made a contribution, India has made a contribution, and other cultures, of course, in the Middle East. And even though the North Atlantic, Europe and the United States would have been the dominant cultural paradigm, we impose a little bit of ourselves on it. So it comes through our prism, and it's not quite what you get from the North Atlantic.
Definitely by the time I was a teenager, I began to feel as if I should evaluate more what it meant to be a part of Trinidad and Tobago than what it meant to be racially African or racially anything at all. Of course, there was a coup, and that was devastating to the country and personally to my family. And that also made people realize that we really live in Trinidad and Tobago and we don't live anywhere else. But also, positively during that time, we had local fashion, appreciation for local music among young people, and maybe that is what made me struggle with the idea of, how could I be Trinidadian and Tobagonian and be African at the same time? I had African friends who were born in Nigeria, and they could say that they were African, but I began to feel that, being from Trinidad and Tobago, I was unique.
No, it's not possible for a Trinidadian to be an African. An African is a person who was born in Africa. A Trinidadian is a person who was born in Trinidad. A Trinidadian, however, could be of African ancestry.
The problem I have with the whole understanding and accepting the part of African as being part of you is, when is the cutoff point and what does that mean? If I identify as African, does that mean I don't relax my hair? Does that mean I wear skirts all the time? Does that mean I am Marisha? What does that mean to me as an individual if I am saying, okay, I'm African? If I'm not going back to Africa and living an African lifestyle, living in the Caribbean and being African, what does that mean? And I don't think I've ever met anyone who has ever found a balance with that. And that is my problem.
I think it's all perception. In my personal perception, no. I think it's too diluted. I have no connection other than the color of my skin.
Well, actually, I just really came out to see what is happening. It doesn't really impact on me per se. For people who are involved in this, I guess it means a lot to them. But to me, it's just another holiday, really.
And for many persons in Trinidad and Tobago, they are not Africans. And although they are Africans, they tell you, well, so much thing impinge upon them that even though they are truly African inside, outside they are all different kind of things. Because some of them are ashamed to say they are Africans, some therefore they say they are this and that and the other, etc. I have a nice calypso on that.
There are so many ethnic groups in Africa, and their attire is different. It's so different, it looks different. There are different colors to tell you about a certain culture. How do I put it? The average Trinidadian only knows the African attire as dashiki, but there are different names to the African attire. There's the female long gown called the bubu. There is the gele, how they wrap their head, like a head tie. The men have a totally different name for the bottom and one for the top. This man that I saw was wearing the bottom of a different tribe, the top of a different tribe, and the cap of a different tribe. So he was wearing 3 tribes in one.
It's a huge continent with different types of people, with different types of belief, and we didn't necessarily come from the entire continent of Africa. There are parts of it come from there. Africa is such a diverse continent that before you start saying you're African, especially with the history that we have, do your research.
Trinidadians cannot, and I don't think they will ever be able to be African in Trinidad, because they don't know what it is to be African. You see, they will need a whole caliber of Africans around in their midst to get them to feel the Africanness of Africans. But see, if a majority of Trinidadians could go to Africa and spend a month in Africa and come back, there will be a change in this society.
I walk a certain space on this earth. I walk a certain space in the Caribbean. I am a space all my own. Nobody could live within me. Nobody could inhabit me. Nothing could come into me that I don't want to, or at least not open to. Okay? So therefore, in defining, be the change you want to see yourself, in defining myself, right? I am in a way defining the Caribbean to me.
When you understand identity, then a person can be of African identity. Some people might say I'm a West Indian, some people can say I'm a Rastafarian, some people can say I'm a European, etc. Some people have another theory that identity can only, that lies within you, because psychology says that you can't see the I in me.
The assertiveness of Africa, and almost taking us back to a sort of Marcus Garvey return to Africa. I think people have moved away from that to one where you recognize your roots, but those roots are blending with other roots to create a new society. So that you're a Trinidadian but of African descent, you're Trinidadian of Indian descent, and you know, when I think back of how the society was when I was in my teen years compared to what it is today. You go out on the street and people of different descents. One person is of more than one descent, you know, and you know, people will be at a loss to decide of which descent they are more of, because they might recognize different cultures.
Even as a young adult, I still struggle with my identity because even though I saw mixed race in the mirror, mentally trying to move away from the idea of being African made me feel guilt, because I knew everything of my African ancestors had suffered for me to be alive, essentially, and I felt that it would be disrespectful.
Only the Africans, once they jump off the boat, that is the end of their being African, because they were put through a process to make them into a slave.
The scars of slavery are still there. One must not hark too much on the past, but you know, we have not quite succeeded in organizing our family life, and some of this goes back to the slave experience. You know, that slaves were bred. There's a period when they were not, the slave owners were not concerned with slaves having children. They wanted a slave, you brought them in and you worked them to the bone. But when the slave trade ended, it was necessary to breed slaves. And I don't know if that is one factor responsible for the irresponsibility that we see among our men folk. Their responsibility ends at conception, you know, and we have not quite succeeded in restoring that sense of family, that commitment that you're responsible for a child. That's you walking in the world several generations forward.
In order to make Africans manageable, they had to de-Africanize them by force, by changing the language that they are taught, separating family members and sending them to different places, putting members of rival ethnic groups together on one plantation, all in an attempt to reduce any concept of unity.
She wasn't allowed by her godmother and uncle, her godmother's husband, who was her uncle-in-law, to go to witness the celebrations. They were not allowed, but the young girls being there with she and her cousins, they would, when they hear the cries and the shouts of certain occasions, this is how they knew something about the Yoruba tribe.
To me, it's about freedom. It's about the love of my people, my African people. We've come so far, right? So from slavery to freedom, this is what it's all about.
It's the freedom of our ancestors who had departed this earth, and we are walking in the footsteps and celebrating their freedom, which they accomplished 200 years ago.
They say their forefathers were slaves, you know, so they don't really know much about their African culture.
Africa's past did not start with slavery, because prior to that, people felt, well, you know, you were taken into slavery, and you had a black past, There's nothing that one could feel proud about prior to being taken out of Africa and brought to the Caribbean. And I think many young people, including young people at the time, including myself, started revisiting the history and learning not only about Africa prior to the voyages of Columbus, but going back to antiquity and recovering the history of ancient Egypt, etc., and realizing that Africa had contributed so much to the world.
And they wouldn't know. And they wouldn't know until they have done a whole course in history, in Caribbean history, and understand where you come from. Because the only time you can understand identity is when you understand your history.
From the outside looking in, anyone can see we're not faking, we're truly family. We're Trinidad and Tobago family. All because of imagination. We realizing great visions, imagination.
Now the flambeau procession has certain traditions. And these traditions we cannot break. So before any flambeau is lit, we have to ask an elder from the crowd, a volunteer, to declare the procession open and just to say something positive to us.
For Wangomoki Africa, Ledoge being in Lankan, Niger, Arani Lesse, Idaraka, Idapuka, Africa. Ashe, 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 Ashe.
Well, I feel it's great. I feel it's great that the people of Trinidad and Tobago have the consciousness to celebrate their ancestors and to remember them, remember the Middle Passage, remember the suffering, because once you know where you come from, you know where you're going. Go ahead.
I understand it's about freedom of the slaves and things.
It's nice to see all about the Africans.
It's like really different than anything I've ever seen before, and it's quite a different experience and unique, and can't wait to tell everybody back home.
The religion is spiritually and it's powerful, and well, everything is from the roots, of Africa, and to walk this road, it's very nice, and I'm not going to give it up.
We eat roti and we eat pilau and kalaloo and crab and dumpling, and we all eat the same foods now. And we go to the same schools, and what is happening is that as you look down the road, the Trinidadian would be somebody of all of these descents. We're all a village, really. The world is a village. There are so many people moving right across the globe, so that migration is now a fact of life. And you're seeing societies, including our own, where you can predict that the people who are the dominant group at one time period are not likely to be the dominant group in another time period, if you're looking at it in the original ethnic terms.
It's not like you're going to meet an Indian on the road and go, oh, wow, look, an Indian. Well, what food do you eat? No, we're still all the same. So as much as we are multicultural, I think we're too small, and we're too connected to each other that we're still one.
So holding on strong together as brothers, loving and respecting one another, regardless of boundaries, creeds or color.
Well, everybody, because the poor parents, all the poor parents, young and old, had participated in emancipation, right? So I feel everybody should get involved.
Exactly, we all should, because we all at some point in time went through that whole, whether it's slavery, indentureship, all of us went through something. So I think that it should be for everybody.
For you to be born, your parents had to get in touch literally with each other. I think you had to be very much in touch with the two of them for you to become the quintessential Mandisa, right? So at the end of the day, that's what I think has to happen for us to get a Caribbean identity, because there's one being suppressed. If the African identity is completely suppressed, we'll be European. If the European is completely suppressed, we'll be African. But if we get in touch with both of them, you have something that never really happened before.
I just think that we should just be a happy bunch, because I don't think it's possible to trace exactly what you are made up of. So I think we should just all come together and call ourselves Trinidadians or Trinbagonians, as it should say.
When I found Africa, it was no longer important for me to, I guess, attempt to struggle to prove that I was African. So, for example, when I visited Nigeria, the experience that I had is that the town that I'm in has its own way. And a person would be a citizen of Oyo, a citizen of Ife. And as an Ife man or an Oyo man, there was a way and a dialect that was known and very specific. They did not necessarily conceive of themselves as part of a larger group for the country, except when it's football time, or part of a larger continent in terms of the way that they define themselves. So I believe that the Pan-African idea is an attempt to, in a sense, create a power base out of all of the people who have been displaced. And by using that power base, address some of the social inequities that have come as a result of slavery.
Here's an idea that I think will make both of your lives easier, right? I identify as being Chris Darcel. You understand?
Exactly.
So that.
Exactly.
No. My problem with always saying I identify as African, I identify as Caribbean, I identify as anything else, is that the world, like you all said, have already established stereotypes towards those identities. So if you're saying you're African, they expect something of you. If you're saying you're Caribbean, they
you don't
expect
have to meet them
something of you.
expectations.
Well, that's my point. By identifying with that, it means that you have already placed yourself under that label for the world. That is what an identity is. It is a label you put on yourself for the world to identify you by.
Is that as you grow and grow and grow, you become more and more experienced and matured. And you become more mature, then you're able to arrive at the identity. So some people who arrive very late, and some people are very early. It depends upon your maturity. Depends upon your maturity.
I could say I am part African. And look at what I'm wearing right now. I'm wearing the white man clothes. Coming from Africa, you that haven't been there, you might think in your head, okay, all Africans wear their attire every day. No, we too tend to wear our attire on special occasions or special ceremonies or feasts. We don't really wear it every day. But like my father now, my father is an African, he's a professor of African folklore. So he deals in the history of Africa. So he has put it upon himself to wear the African attire every day. He has removed anything white man from his daily life. He doesn't really eat the white food. He eats his traditional foods. He dresses traditionally and behaves traditional. I mean, that is a true African for you.
It's like this. You will be anywhere in the world. Where do you consider home? And to me, home is the Caribbean, hands down. I don't care where I go. Home is the Caribbean. If something happens to me in some far foreign land, right, and they tell me, and war has broken out, and they say, here is a ticket to go home. I am saying, take me to Trinidad by whatever means possible. Take me to the Caribbean. That is where home is. That is what I identify with. I identify with the pan and everything else. So therefore, my identity is going to be Caribbean. And Caribbean is not just Africa.
There is nothing wrong with identity, because identity is a personal thing. It's a personal thing. And you cannot, for a person, when the concept of identity teaches you that it is based upon your concept of who you are. But that concept of who you are is based upon your studies and your experiences.
Now, as a mother myself, I'm glad I was raised to be proud of my African heritage. After all, I gave my daughter an African name. I try to teach her to be proud of her African heritage, even as I try to teach her that we are Trinidadian and Tobagonian. We are unique. We are Caribbean. We are a new civilization.
And I want you to see yourself, free yourself. So holding on strong together as brothers, loving and respecting one another, regardless of boundaries, creeds or colors. In Trinidad, from the outside looking in, anyone can see we're not faking,